Okay. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. My name is Jody Margolis, and I'm the registered dietitian at Student Wellness and Health Promotion. And this is the second in my summer series of Quick Bites. So I thank you all for joining me today on a topic that I found really interesting to do a little bit of research on. Climate-friendly nutrition. So let me just get my program going. Give me one sec. Okay, so welcome. I hope everybody's having a fun and good summer, and that you take some time to kind of recharge your batteries and reset, and just use this time for some self-care, some much needed self-care after a school year during the pandemic. So if you're not familiar with UCI Student Center for Student Wellness and Health Promotion, here are different areas of focus. Of course, mine is nutrition and body image. We offer a lot of different programs, individual consultations, workshops, and services. Definitely follow us on social media. I'll share that at the end of the presentation. But we look forward to seeing students back on campus and having you get to access like our student wellness room. And we offer our condom co-op. We offer virtually, we were doing pet therapy Thursdays and guided meditation. So look for all of our new programming coming up in the fall. And this is always a safe space. I like students to be able to share, ask questions, and feel respected and honored too. So I always like to let people know about that. So, climate-friendly nutrition, like why did I pick this as a topic for the Quick Bite series that I've been doing? Because I feel like students really do care so much about the health of the planet. And they also care about their own health. And so more and more, I think people in general, but students especially, are really connecting and seeing that their diet choices can have an impact and an environmental footprint that can make a difference in the health of our planet. And this is confirmed even by a survey done by the International Food Information Council Foundation in 2019. They did a food and health survey, and they found that 54% of consumers say it's important that foods they purchase and consume are sustainably produced. And when we do that, when our food is produced using techniques that protect the environment, public health, communities, our ecosystems, and animals, that's going to give us a reliable food supply for future generations. So, this is an important topic. And I know even for myself, when I watch the news sometimes and I see all the different things about climate change and about these every year worse and worse wildfires, especially in my home state of California, it can feel kind of daunting. It can feel like, what can I do to make a difference? And if you as a student have felt that way too, I hope you come away today just knowing that there are things that you can do to make a difference. And when we see that, we keep living in this cycle again, especially in California, of drought, seeing our lakes like Lake Shasta at really low levels, what can we do to help support that? And that's really important. So, it might sometimes feel like, what can I do? Like, I'm just one person, right? Like, is really what I do going to make a big difference towards the health of the planet? But it does. And we'll talk about different ways. And I even think about, when we used to encourage bringing your recyclable bags to the grocery store, right? And some people did it and some people didn't. But then when they added a fee, like a 10-cent fee to have to use plastic bags and not recyclable bags, then people became incentivized. So sometimes it's individuals, sometimes we need, I think an incentive by, our local or state government to help us kind of push us towards that change, or to make it the easier choice to just bring recyclable bags in. So, I think it's just thinking about, could you make even a simple switch, like from using paper napkins to cloth napkins? And then, when you do your laundry, you just throw in those cloth napkins in with your load of laundry. There's so many different things. And so today we'll talk about some different ways with your food choices that it can make a difference. So, why is a sustainable diet important? You might ask yourself, well, is it because I care about animals? That's a good reason, right? I mean, if you're somebody who is worried about the welfare of livestock and how they're being raised and crowded environments and things like that, then we can talk about making a change there, because beef and lamb have the most greenhouse gas emission effect as far as eating animal foods goes. So, just making a switch to eating less beef or less lamb, that can make a big difference. And also, thinking about like where your food comes from, how far does it travel? A lot of food is produced, in other countries and brought in, and it goes thousands and thousands of miles to get to us. And so is there an opportunity to think about that and make some choices on food that is grown more locally? And so that's really important. Overfishing. So lots of different things to think about why a sustainable diet is important. And of course, all the chemicals in our foods, in processed foods, right? Additives, preservatives, the pesticides sprayed on the crops, those things also, they get run off into our rivers and water systems. So lots of opportunities there to think about why it's so important. Any of these for people participating today, if you want to unmute yourself, for you, when you think about why a sustainable diet's important, why does it matter to you?
For me, I feel like looking at all of these, because I'm trying to be more sustainable in general, even with clothing now. This year, I started to think more about that.
Instead of like the whole fast fashion thing where
exactly. And like some of these popular brands, trying to, not buy as much. And also like if I do need clothes or food, like looking at more sustainable options and brands.
Yeah.
But sometimes,
go ahead.
It's like sometimes difficult though to know like if they're actually doing something. Like some companies claim they have like sustainable goals, but then I don't know if they're actually doing it or like
right.
just saying it for the
yeah, we kind of have to trust the process. I mean, I think a big part too is when we go to the market, we have so many options now, right? I mean, there's just so many brands. And like when we look at the packaging, they make it really appealing to us. Psychologically, they know how to market this food, but are we taking a step back and saying like, why do I need my yogurt package to have a plastic lid and like all these, all these different containers? Or like if you shop at, I'm just going to say, let's say Trader Joe's, right? Because they're across street from campus and I'm a big Trader Joe's shopper. But, when you think about a lot of their fruits and vegetables come in plastic packaging. And then they also have the ones that are in the bins with the more environmentally friendly like bags where you can just bag it yourself and that bag's recyclable or compostable. So kind of just even when we're at the grocery store, thinking about even when we buy, let's say our peaches, instead of buying the one that's in the plastic pack, could we just hand pick it? And could we bring in our own cloth bag to put those peaches in instead of using a plastic bag,
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, and then when we think more about the SAD diet, is SAD stands for Standard American Diet, but it's kind of the perfect acronym for what the American diet looks like. It looks kind of sad, right? It's a lot of processed foods, high in fat, high in sugar, high in sodium. And when you think about it, most of the foods that we eat as part of the Standard American diet have really affected the way food is grown and processed in this country, right? So think about all the sugar in our foods, in our beverages and things like that. And that now, you know, most of our crops are things like corn and soy and wheat. And we've gotten out of rotating our crops. We've developed these monocrops, and they really kind of erode the soil. They affect the nutrients in the soil and deplete them. And it used to be in farming systems, you would grow different rotational crops because certain crops would put nutrients back into the soil. So, you know, all those things make a big difference when we think about the kinds of food that we're making, manufacturing here in the United States. You know, what is the environmental footprint of the food we're eating, not only just because it's creating most of our chronic diseases that we die from, like, you know, diabetes, obesity related diseases, heart disease, diet related cancers, but it's kind of killing our planet also. And so, and these foods, these highly processed foods, they're really low in nutrition, right? We know that. We know French fries aren't giving us lots of vitamins and minerals, but environmentally, they take a lot of money and resources to produce, a lot of water, a lot of energy, and a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's like they're not giving us good, nourishing food, and they're really depleting the planet. So, you know, I think we want to consider that as something when we go to make a food choice, not just like, oh, is this good for me? And of course, sometimes we're going to eat French fries and sometimes we're going to have a piece of pizza. But I think we also want to kind of take a minute to realize, like, oh, look at the carton that the French fries comes in. Like, oh, what did it take to produce that, right? Where did the potatoes come from? How far did they come? What kind of chemicals are they putting in the French fries? There's so much more to consider about what we eat. So I'd love to take like 5 minutes to show you this YouTube video. It's put out by the University of California. So Erica, if you want to watch it, it's 5 minutes, and then I'd love to hear what you think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let me.
Waiters always look at me and think that I'm going to have a little salad, maybe a soup, and that'll be the whole meal. And when I do my actual order, there's this priceless look on their face, like they can't believe, like, is someone else coming?
I have to admit that when it comes to food, I'm a total sucker. Whether it's sugar or grease or carbs, pretty much bring it on. And I spend a lot of time in Montana. So for me, that medium rare grass-fed ribeye steak, pretty much as good as it gets. I know, I don't do it often. And when I do, I gotta admit, I feel a little conflicted. And that's for a lot of reasons, including the planet. But how big of a problem is what I eat? I mean, does it really make much of a dent in something as huge as global warming? It turns out what we put on our plates matters a lot.
About 25% of all the global climate change problems we're seeing can be attributed back to the food and the choices that we're actually making about what we eat on a daily basis. This is greater than all the cars on the planet. In fact, it's about twice as much global warming pollution as the cars.
Ben Holton and Maya Almaroz study the connection between climate and diet at the University of California, Davis. They track how the way we produce food creates greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. With their data, the team has crunched the numbers to figure out how much carbon pollution is produced by different foods and different diets.
A lot of people feel really helpless when it comes to climate change, like they can't make a difference. And what our research is showing is that your personal decisions really can have a big impact.
So take that grass-fed ribeye steak I love. If you really look at everything that went into making a single serving of beef, you end up emitting around 330 grams of carbon. That's like driving a car 3 miles. Now, if I choose to have chicken instead, there's more than a 5-fold drop in emissions. Switch to fish, and you see the number go down even more. Now, look at veggies. If I swapped beef out entirely for lentils, well, I'm down to practically nothing. So why does beef and lamb too, for that matter, pack such a powerful punch to the planet? Livestock accounts for a little over 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If that sort of seems low to you, consider it's about equal to transportation. We're talking all the cars, trucks, planes, trains, and ships on the planet combined. This is partly because ruminant animals like cows and sheep, they're just gassy. And the methane they produce is at least 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Plus, it takes a lot of land, fertilizer, and about 1 billion tons of grain to feed all that livestock.
And you could feed 3.5 billion people with that grain. If we were just directly eating these grains ourselves, it would eliminate a lot of the CO2 that's emitted from cattle production.
So it's clear that meat has a pretty big carbon load. But it's also worth remembering that not all livestock is raised equally. In parts of the American West, for instance, ranchers are working to raise livestock in ways that actually help restore the land. And they're experimenting with ways that soil and grasslands can be used to keep carbon pollution out of the air. But even these sustainable ranchers will really tell you we're probably eating too much meat.
I know a lot of people who, if you don't serve them meat for lunch or dinner, they're kind of like, well, when is the meat coming out?
It's to the point now where the US actually has one of the highest meat footprints per capita. So what about not eating meat at all? Vegan is the way to go for the least impact on the planet, but it's not that much different in terms of emissions than, say, a vegetarian diet. And the team found that the environmental impact of the Mediterranean diet is pretty similar to vegan and vegetarian diets. It's a lot less meat heavy than what Americans are used to. So fish and poultry a few times a week, beef maybe once a month, plenty of plant-based foods, and of course, loads of olive oil.
Eliminating like 90% of your meat intake is more important than eliminating all of your meat. We don't all have to be vegan. We don't all even have to be vegetarian. If we can just reduce our meat intake, every little bit helps. And if you can bring it down a lot, you can help the climate a lot.
If we all just switched to a Mediterranean diet, it could actually solve 15% of global warming pollution by 2050.
If everyone were to move toward it, that is equivalent to taking somewhere around 1 billion cars off of the streets in terms of vehicle emissions each year. So that kind of a footprint is big time.
But say you still want more meat than the Mediterranean diet recommends. Just cutting down your portion size to the doctor recommended 4 ounces can reduce your emissions by half. That's huge.
In fact, the doctors are telling us we're eating about twice as much meat as we really need for a healthy diet.
The good news is we are listening to our doctors. In the last decade, there's been a 19% drop in the amount of beef we eat.
All these things that you're already being told are good for you also happen to be good for the planet.
So what we eat really is a big part of the climate puzzle. I mean, we may not all be able to afford an electric car or putting solar panels on our house, but we all have to eat every day. And these choices we make can add up to really big numbers. And since meat has a pretty big carbon load, we need to be thoughtful about how much we eat. As for that ribeye steak that I really love, I am honestly trying to cut back. Maybe just a smaller piece of steak, or simply swapping out a meat dish for a veggie burger. It may seem like a small thing, but it really does add up to big impacts. Hey, so what did you have for dinner last night? Find out how your choices are affecting global warming by taking a quiz at climate.universityofcalifornia.edu, or watch one of our other episodes to discover what happened when I brought a box of donuts to MIT.
7 out of 10 deaths in the US are caused by chronic illnesses that are preventable.
Okay, I'm gonna plug back in. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. So what'd you think?
I really liked that video. I actually want to low-key recommend that to like some friends and family if I can, because I really like the statistics they use. It
Yeah.
really like shows how big of an impact like the food that we buy and produce as humans like impact the world. And then
Yeah, I felt the same way. You know, it's funny. I don't always like putting video clips in my presentations. I've gone to presentations where I'm like, oh my God, they put a 15-minute video clip in. It's
yeah,
kind of boring. But when I saw this one, it just, for me, it kind of it said it all. And I love also, of course, that it's from UC, researchers, but there's this whole UC climate lab I didn't know anything about, or that you could take a quiz to see like how you're eating, your food choices are impacting it. So thanks for the feedback, because I wanted to hear if you felt like it was as impactful as I hoped it was.
Yeah, it was. And it was like, I think the right amount of time. Like, I think
5 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, 5 minutes in a 30-minute presentation is kind of a lot, but
Yeah.
that I loved when they, or what surprised me when they showed all the grain, right?
Yeah.
The thousands and thousands of pounds we feed to the cows.
Can
And if
feed
we
us.
ate it ourselves, it would feed the planet and we'd be so much healthier. We'd have this high fiber diet instead. What's really fascinating to me is my husband's a veterinarian. He was trained in both large and small animal, and he'll always say, like, cows are ruminants. They're meant to eat grass. They were never meant to eat grain, but that's what we feed them now, right? We feed them something that's completely different than what they inherently would eat, and that changes the composition of the meat that we eat from them. So, after watching that, were there any like sparks for you of things personally where you felt like, oh, you know what, I think maybe this is something I could do to make a change, like even a tiny habit change?
Yeah, I actually noticed for me, this past year, since I was in my first apartment, I had to cook more. I actually have been like trying to eat more fish and chicken.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't really actually buy beef or anything unless like at home, like if I'm cooking.
Yeah.
Like just once in a while if I go to a restaurant and like maybe I'll get a steak once like in a while. So
Yeah, it's more like a special treat.
yeah, exactly. And so and I have been trying to eat more fish. So that was kind of cool to hear about
Yeah.
like how many like the carbon emissions,
Yeah,
how if you
it's
go from
way
beef,
less.
chicken, yeah, to fish. And then I actually want to look into a Mediterranean diet. That like really stood out to me, like how it can have a similar impact as being vegetarian and vegan. That
I
really
thought
stood
so
out.
too. I loved that because I think, becoming vegan is not for everybody. It can be pretty restrictive. It can be, if you're not intentional about what you eat when you're vegan, you can miss out on some really important nutrients
Yeah.
nutritionally. And so I think it's so nice to hear that you don't have to be vegan or even vegetarian. And even I would dare say, like, Mediterranean is a great way of eating, not only for health and the health of the planet, but I feel like it leaves out, so many of our students who are from, let's say, all the countries in Asia. And I
Mhm.
almost worry sometimes it's offensive to say that there's one eating style that's best for us or for the planet, because I think we can take aspects of what's so great about the Mediterranean diet and also apply it to foods that are common in other parts of the world. So what's great about Mediterranean, it's mostly fish heavy, right? Lots of fruits and vegetables. Maybe in an Asian diet, you do more sea vegetables, but lots of fish still, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you just reduce your consumption of things like beef. So it's interesting because Mediterranean always gets a lot of buzz, but I think it leaves a lot of people out too.
True.
So,
Yeah.
and working at a large, diverse university, I feel like I always have to have that lens of like, who is that leaving out when we say Mediterranean, right? Because
Yeah,
also
that's
think
true.
about, Central America, Latin America, great, lots of beans. So similar to the Mediterranean diet and lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of beans, some corn-based food. So again, it's like you can add more fish and maybe decrease meat consumption, and it can also be really healthy. So here's just, a couple ways to also make some small steps. So obviously eating more plant-based foods and kind of choosing a wide variety. So I think for most of us, we'd admit, like, we tend to eat the same fruits and vegetables quite often. So like cast a wider net, like think like what could I try that I've never tried before? You know, also like you were saying, eating less beef, more chicken and fish. And then some of the fish that we're probably not as used to eating here in our country, but things like sardines and herring, those are the smaller fish. They're called forage fish, but they're lower on the food chain, and they're really healthy. Things like sardines or anchovies, they're very oily fish, so they're really good for our heart health. I know insects is something like I've never eaten, but there are cultures where that's part of their diet. And that's probably going to be sustainable for the long term as our planet gets more crowded. So like, you know, trying new things and seeing how that goes, being an adventurous eater is, I think, important. If you weren't raised eating a lot of lentils and beans, the good news is you can buy canned beans if you want. Yeah, it would be more sustainable to buy a bag of dried beans, soak them and boil them yourself, but that's okay. You don't, you know, just eating less meat and more beans, even if it means canned beans, is a good choice. Lentils are incredibly nutrient rich as well and super easy to cook. You can even buy them pre-cooked and vacuum sealed at Trader Joe's. Now, again, if we want to reduce the packaging and the plastic, cooking them yourself is better. But I think it's still going to be important if it helps you to eat less beef by including more lentils in your diet. They're a great meat substitute in things like tacos or in different stews and soups. When we eat locally, right? So when we go to a farmer's market and we buy what was grown locally, it's not having to be transported as far. So there's less gasoline costs, less emissions from even the trucks that transport those foods. And also there's a lot of nutrition in eating what's grown locally and seasonally, right? Because then it can be picked at the height of its ripeness. It's got more nutrients versus like if we get food that's shipped from the other side of the world, it's usually shipped when it's not ripe and it's not going to be as flavorful and it's not going to necessarily be as nutrient rich. So, and then avoiding food waste. So we waste, I think the statistic is like up to 40% of food is actually thrown away in food waste. So if we could just shrink our portions and be more portion aware of what we really need and are hungry for, and then we either saved the rest for later or we threw it into a soup or a stir fry. If we paid more attention to those things and learned how to avoid food waste or how to compost some of those things, or even now there's local food shelters that are keyed into being able to, like with restaurants and food waste, it used to be a food safety concern. If restaurants could donate uneaten food at the end of the night, but there is a little ease of those restrictions because we know food insecurity is a huge problem. So just a couple other ways to promote plant-based eating. So, you know, maybe if you never think about adding veggies to your breakfast, think about like, how could I add more plants to breakfast and less animal foods, or more fruit, right? Could you cut up a bowl of fruit, maybe add a dollop of yogurt instead of yogurt being like the main star of breakfast, or let's say if it's eggs and sausage, maybe you just do eggs and veggies instead of the meat-based sausage. So think about that. Try meatless Mondays. Maybe the goal, like for you, you said you're already reduce your meat consumption, but for, you know, people in the family or roommates, when you live together, think about, hey, let's try and do like some meatless nights together and try some new recipes. And when you go to the grocery store, think about like getting your fruits and veggies, all your plant-based food first. That's where you want to spend your money. The good news is it's cheaper, right? I mean, do you notice like when you started buying less meat, you saved money at the grocery store?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, to me, it's like such a win because it's like, okay, this is a healthier way to eat. It's healthier for our planet and it's easier on our pocketbook. So, you know, it's nice that they all kind of align that way. I think some people would be surprised. They think, oh, eating I hear this often, like eating healthy is expensive. No, beans are cheap, lentils are cheap. Most you can buy frozen fruits and vegetables. It doesn't have to all be fresh, you know? So I think it's just a misconception. I have, if you check out our student wellness and health promotion website and you go to the nutrition topics page and you scroll down, I have a link to a plant-based pantry list on there that you might find helpful. Certainly, like boosting cooking skills, and the Anteater Rec Center offers free cooking classes. They also offer on Insta the Anteater Test Kitchen. You can follow their Insta site, and they've got great recipes. So just boosting your cooking skills a little bit can go a long way in including more plant-based recipes. And it can be easy, things like bean burritos, or like think about Chipotle bowls and how cheap and easy those types of bowls are to make for yourself really at home, right? And I think because so many countries besides our do eat more plant-based, more developing countries eat more plant-based because meat's expensive, quite honestly. So when you start to like broaden your horizons and try some different cuisines from around the world that are plant-based, it's kind of fun to experiment. And then, you know, having a couple great appliances to help you with your plant-based eating. Like I use my slow cooker a lot. I know some students are into the Instapot. I have a air fryer, and I love throwing my veggies in there. I love doing salmon in there. So I've found that I don't even have to put my oven on. If you have a rice cooker, you can cook grains in there. So do you feel like you have some appliances that help you kind of with your plant-based eating?
Yeah, my friend has an air fryer that I sometimes use, and
Yeah.
then yeah, I have a rice cooker.
Yeah, the air fryer is amazing because at first I was only doing certain foods in it, and then slowly, like a friend told me, "Oh, try salmon in there," and I hadn't thought of putting salmon in there, but it caramelized it. It was so good. So I just keep kind of leaning into experimenting with that. Plant-based dairy, what I'll say about plant-based dairy living in California and working with college students is college students keep reporting to me that the milk beverage they drink the most is almond milk. And it can be a bit problematic in the sense that almonds are the most water thirsty crop. You know, and we live in California where we're already in drought conditions. Eating almonds is super healthy for you. But when they take almonds to make almond milk, they actually end up throwing most of the almonds away after they've soaked them. So all you're left with is basically water, and then they fortify it with vitamins and minerals so that you get some calcium and things like that. So, you know, nutritionally speaking, the best plant-based alternative to cow's milk would be soy milk, or even like a pea protein milk, like a Ripple brand. But almond milk itself nutritionally is not the best, and from a drought perspective, not great either. And it's $1 billion industry. The almond milk industry is growing fast, so it's okay to drink almond milk every once in a while, but I think understand, you know, the impact that that might have. And just think optimistically, like, you know what, even if you were the biggest meat eater, can you just eat one less meat-based dish a week? Like I always say, like start with baby steps and then slowly build your confidence that, you know, that you can do it. So here's, I don't know if you want to take a picture of some of these resources, but I've got a bunch of Insta accounts that I love to follow. Some of them are for plant-based recipes, just to kind of build your repertoire. At dietitian Debbie, she's a plant-based dietitian, so I really enjoy following her postings and her recipes. At the EAT Foundation, that's going to give you a lot to think about as far as kind of sustainability and food choices. MDR, the website at the bottom, that's the Mediterranean Diet Roundtable Project. So since you said you were especially interested in Mediterranean, I think you'll find that website really interesting. And then on the other side, the smartphone apps, I love Daily Dozen. It's a smartphone app that really gets you to hone in on how many servings of things like beans and nuts and fruits and vegetables you're getting a day. So unlike my Fitness Pal, where you're tracking calories and macros, and I think that can lead to a lot of disordered eating in some students and become too tedious. Daily Dozen is getting you to think about real food and like how much real food are you eating. And so if you notice by using that like, gosh, I hardly ever eat beans, maybe then the goal becomes, can I include some sort of bean? Could be edamame, soybeans, could be black beans, chickpeas. Can I just slowly increase that? So it's an awareness tool that I like. The Mia Lime, that's a smartphone app that's a recipe one. I love the filters and the settings for it because you can put vegetarian, you can put Mediterranean, they'll spit out recipes depending on what your interest is. And if there's foods that you hate, let's say you hate eggplant, you can check that off and it'll never give you a recipe with eggplant. And then the final one's that podcast, Let's Rethink Food, all about sustainability and nutrition. So, and then here's just my references. That University of California Climate Lab, that's where the YouTube video came from today. And there's a couple other resources that if you're kind of interested in taking a deep dive into more about climate-friendly nutrition. So that is it for today. Do you have any questions for me?
No, that was really good though. I
Good.
learned a lot, and I did take a picture of the
Good,
last,
good.
like 3 slides.
Good, great. Yeah. And I'll make sure that we post it for the other interns and other students to see. But thanks for attending.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right.
I
Take
really
care. Have
like
a
this.
great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.